Hey, thanks for tuning into my podcast. This is Big Head on the Block, hosted by me, Tim Henderson, aka Big Head. Hey, welcome back to Big Head on the Block. I have the newly elected mayor of Baton Rouge, Sid Edwards, who's going to be our guest today. So, Mayor, I would like to say welcome aboard.
Hey, good morning. I'm honored to be on.
Well, as we get started with this, I just kind of want to give you some background on Big Head on the Block. It's based on my career, my 32-year career as a police officer in Baton Rouge, the last 24 and a half with the Baton Rouge City Police Department, where I retired as a lieutenant. I consider myself a street guy, a crime fighter, and I'm going to ask you some questions that's going to relate to Baton Rouge. But before we get started with all that, I want to get a little background because a lot of people that may be listening to my podcast either may not know who you are or may not have a background on you. So could you just tell us your name and then give me an idea where you grew up, a little background content?
Sure. You see, I've got names now. I'm Emil Brian Edwards is my full name, and my nickname is Sid. But Sid stuck with me all these years, and I got that name right out of my alma mater, Redemptorist High School in North Baton Rouge. A coach over there, Larry Gilbo, Coach Gilbo, tabbed me with that nickname, and it's stuck forever. But yeah, I'm from the 70805. Went to the same school, same street for 12 years, St. Jared Elementary through Redemptorist Junior and Redemptorist High School.
Yeah, and for those who are listening, a lot of people like to say St. Gerard, but it's St. Jared, FYI, just like the coach said. I may call you coach or mayor. I'm going to transition back and forth because I really think that you probably define both roles. So if it's okay.
Oh, yes.
Whatever.
Yes.
Now, when you say Coach Gilbo, everybody who went to Redemptorist knows that was a tough guy. The only guy I think tougher than him, and I'm not talking about a fight, but just as the mentality was Coach Vice. I don't know if Bill Vice was there.
Oh, he was. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
That was
a legend.
Yeah. So I got out in 86, you got out in 81, so we didn't have the opportunity to cross paths very much. But I will say this, throughout your coaching career, because Redemptorist people follow Redemptorist people, I found that you were very accomplished and as a coach, and I believe you coached baseball as well as football, right?
Basketball, actually.
Basketball, okay. I was close.
Not every year, but I filled in a year, and it turned into 3 years. That was around 2002, 3, and 4 when I was the head basketball coach as well.
So did you win a state championship as a basketball coach?
We did. We did. We won it in the 03 season. Yeah. Sure did.
You just prompted because I was really going to focus on your football career because that's what most people know you from. But it just popped in my head. I think he won a basketball championship. Well, kudos to you. Tell us about when you got into teaching and what brought you, or coaching, whatever, and what brought you into that field out of high school or college.
Man, it was really crazy. I was 16 years old coming out of my sophomore year in high school, and the neighborhood girls needed a softball coach, and no one would coach them. So there it began. I coached a girls softball team, and I did it for all the way through high school and maybe my first year in college. And then some of the moms of some of these girls hit me that they were looking for a football coach for the 3rd and 4th grade St. Jared Wolves. They didn't have no one. Now, as you know, I never played football. I played 1 year in the 6th grade. So I had a neighbor, Bubba Broussard. His dad, Milton Broussard's a legendary Baker coach. And we went to the Pizza Hut, and we got on some napkins, and he drew me some plays up, and therein the career began. I caught the fever, and that's kind of how I started.
Man, that's some good content for this podcast because I think it's important for people to get to know people that are in these political positions. You're the mayor of Baton Rouge. You're the mayor of a major metropolitan police department, and it's good to know that you came from humble backgrounds and that you did a lot of these things. And the way you got your start, that's really impressive to me. The funny thing was the Pizza Hut thing, because I could see that happening, and I can see that moment, and so it lit a fire under you. When did you become a head football coach at a high school?
Well, Well, I tell you, now in the high school ranks, they got something called a CCP coach, which means you don't have to teach the coach.
Okay.
Now you can't be a head football coach, but you can be a coach. Well, they didn't have that back then. So what I did is that when I was 20, I guess I was 20, I coached that third and fourth grade team for a couple of years. Then I moved up to the fifth and sixth grade team. Well, then I was coaching basketball at Our Lady of Mercy School. And Glenn Rando, who was the head basketball coach at Catholic High, asked if I would consider coming to Catholic High to coach his ninth grade team. Well, I did, and that's where I met Dale Weiner. And Dale asked me to be his head ninth grade football coach. So I did that. I was a ninth grade coach for those sports for a decade.
Wow.
And the whole time I was coaching AAU basketball in the summer, and we were having some pretty good success. And Ricky Broussard, the head basketball coach at Nicholls State, asked if I would come on. Now, the whole time I'm having a family. I'm in the middle of all this. I'm getting married. I'm having children. But I was so wrapped up in the coaching that I wasn't worried about school or college. I was cutting grass, painting houses, just hustling, hustling money to try to feed the family. But when I went to Nicholls, I decided, well, I'm there coaching, I'm going to enroll. And I enrolled in classes because I had went to college all on and off. And I needed 27 hours to graduate when John Fobb, the principal of Redemptress, called me and said, look, man, would you be interested in applying for the football job? And I said, I would. He says, where are you in school? I said, well, and now this was January. I said, I've got 27 hours to complete. He says, oh, goodness, because you had to be degreed.
Right.
So, well, I took 27 hours in school that semester.
Man.
Was running the weight room for the Nicholls State basketball team, had 3 kids at the time, and teaching PE part-time at an elementary school in Thibodaux. But I got it done, with a lot of help from a lot of people. And that's when that was my first head football job in 1997 at Redemptress.
Man, that's a good story because it shows that through dedication and motivation that you can achieve your goals. 27 hours. I have 0 college hours to my credit, but I can tell you this. I know people that went to college. My kids went to college and stuff. Very few people can take 27 hours, but very few people can take 27 hours, make money, raise a family, and continue to do what they were doing. As you said, the weight room for the football team. That's pretty good. So you got a lot of drive. You got a lot of desire. And for the record, you got 1 basketball state championship in 2003. I know you have at least 1 football. I just can't remember what year.
Yeah, we won it. We went to the Dome in 2000 and we lost. Then we won the state championship in football in 2002 and 2003.
Okay.
And then we won the basketball one in 2003, the same year as the second football one.
Okay. And so that was all at Redemptress?
All at Redemptress, yes, indeed.
And then you played or you won the state championship with Central as a football coach?
No, we made it. At the furthest I went at Central was the state semifinals. Okay. We lost by 6 to Destrehan in the semis. The year leaves me. I think that was 2009. 2009.
I was thinking it was somewhere in that era. But you actually put not only Redemptress was never on the map in football. You put us on the map in football. You made people want to come to the Rock and watch football. You made us excited. We kept up with you in the newspaper. Now it's been some years ago, so I only have somewhat of a recollection, but I do remember that was if I remember correctly, that was the Jeremy Hill days.
Yeah, actually, Jeremy was after me.
He was after you? Okay.
Guy Mastretta was the head football coach when Jeremy Hill and Lael Collins and those guys went through. My group spanned about 4 years. Shelton Sampson, David Plaisance, Kyle Hebert, Jay Lucas, Robert Johnson, John O'Neill. All those were, they went on to play college football. Yeah. And that was the group that kind of opened it up. Yes.
Okay. Well, good deal. So now you're at a point in your life where you have 3 kids. I think you have a couple of special needs kids.
Yeah, I now have 4 kids.
Oh, you have 4? Okay.
Yeah, I had 3 when I was in Thibodaux.
Okay.
And my two youngest, and when I say youngest, one's 34, one's 24. They're autistic children. They have autism.
Okay. Well, that's got to be challenging, man, especially in the current position you in, raising a family, having special needs, kids that are autistic. You know, as a police officer, I deal with a lot of autistic children just, you know, for minutes or hours. And it's a challenge. And I commend you for being able to juggle a life with the family and you and your wife taking care of these kids and also putting yourself in the running for mayor of Baton Rouge, because that's a big step.
Yeah, I credit my wife with that. You know, it is quite a challenge for sure. And then, you know, a football coach's hours, and I've transitioned into political office. The hours are actually worse than a coach. And to have a good wife like I have, you know, Beanie, and she's taken a load on, and the whole while she taught too. You know, she taught for 34 years, and
Okay.
she's retired, and we got 3 grandbabies now, so she helps tend to them, but I credit her with being able to do it.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing, man. I always tell people, if you're going to be a cop, and in your situation, a coach and or a politician, you have to have a good wife or a good spouse. If you're a female, you need a good husband. The support group that you need to be in the profession that I was in is you have to have a strong spouse, somebody that you can lean on, somebody that you can just bell egg to, you know, from time to time. Sometimes you ain't looking for answers. You just want to gripe about something that you don't like, or, you know, a bad day or whatever. And even in my career, to share some experiences that were extremely negative throughout the day. It's always good to have somebody to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So let's
I'm
go.
gonna tell you, it's big.
Yeah, it's big. And you know, when I was a young cop, that wasn't really what people talked about. It was like suck it up, buttercup kind of deal, just like Coach Fice and Coach Gilbo and them told you on the football field. If you got hurt, they didn't really, it's not that they didn't care, but it's just the era that we were in. You were going to play football, you were going to be tough, you were going to get hurt, so get up and move on. That's kind of how we all grew up. And just to let everybody know, I went to Redemptus, like I said earlier, and Redemptus was a great school. They're no longer in existence, and maybe one day in your position, if you get an opportunity or if there's another strong desire, maybe bring Redemptus back, because it was a good school and there's a lot of successful people that came through Redemptus.
Oh man, it was home, and the way we were raised and where we were raised and the school we went to was such a blessing.
Yeah.
You know, that we got to go there, and it was a melting pot of a tremendous, you know, human beings that led us, you know, all the way back to the priests and the nuns and the faculty and the community. Just a wonderful place.
Yep, I concur with you 100%, as well as a lot of my listeners who are Redemptus graduates. So let's transition now to your job. You decided to run for mayor. Was there, without giving me 30 reasons, was there one or two sticking points that said, hey, man, I really want to do this for this reason? And before you answer that, let me tell you this. Before you came, they had an administration prior to you. I didn't like the direction of the administration and the police department, so I combined them as one. And I said to myself, I've never wanted to be a chief of police, although I was chief in Killian. I never wanted to be a chief of police. I was a street guy. Anybody who knows me will tell you, I wanted to be a uniform patrol sergeant. That was my goal. It took me 16 years and 3 months to achieve that goal. But when I did, I felt like I had accomplished what I set forth to accomplish. But I didn't like the direction of the police department, and I had just retired. I'd been retired for about 2 years. And I said to myself, you know, I don't talk negative about Baton Rouge, the city. I don't talk about negative about the officers. It's just not who I am. But I said, there's some people that I think would keep the administration going in the same direction. And if I don't put in to be the chief, then I can't complain about it, even though it didn't affect me because I'm already retired, right? So I put in, I took the test, I passed the test. I went through the selection process because I wanted to give them options. I didn't want the Baton Rouge City Police Department to continue in the manner it was, the direction that it was in, because I thought there was a lot of negativity in the department. That being said, I wasn't selected. And I'll tell you this, the panel that interviewed us, it was a committee. There was not one cop on that committee. And I took exception to that because you have a lot of social workers and you have other organizations represented, but you're a police chief that has to effectively fight crime, but you don't have anybody up there saying this is a good candidate for this reason or that reason. So if you're ever put in that position again, I urge you, if you do put a committee together, I don't know why a committee was needed, but if you do, at least have the police department representative, even if you bring in somebody from out of state. But that's why I ran for chief. So give us an idea of what your motivation was, and you can keep it as long or as quaint as you want.
I lived in Central for a decade. And when I was living there and coaching out there, I got approached twice, about running for mayor in Central, and I dismissed it immediately. I'm a ball coach. I like being with kids, and I said no. Well, we moved in 2016 to Baton Rouge, and one night I was talking, and I said, there might be a day that I might look at something like that. So I started studying up on it, looking at it. This was as far back as 2017, 2018. But I would dismiss it and I would keep coaching. It's all I knew. And I called a friend and I said, look, man, who's in politics? And I asked about running for mayor, in Baton Rouge. And my buddy told me, nah, you don't want that, man. He goes, Central, that's a whole different deal than being a Central mayor and being the mayor president of the parish. He goes, Central, I could see it. He said, but Baton Rouge, I don't know. So, that was fine. I took it. Well, I was coaching at Central, still living in Baton Rouge, but coaching at Central. So let's just say out of state coaching at Central. I would have never ran for office, but I moved and I took a job in the inner city at Estruma High School and I went back home really, to the north side.
Right.
And when I got there and I saw the poverty, the despair and the hopelessness, that's a part of Baton Rouge people don't really see. People who come from the South into North Baton Rouge generally are coming to go to the airport. They're going to Krispy Kreme donuts, Tony's Seafood, and maybe cutting through to go to the zoo.
Right.
But other than that, they don't peel back the curtain for me to see what those citizens, those people are going through, what they don't have. So it opened my eyes, being at that school at Estruma High.
Right.
And it culminated with one of my players being murdered, a very bright young man walking down the street on New Year's Day in 2024. He was gunned down. They killed his brother 3 weeks later. And it just kept, I said, my God, I knew we had an issue in Baton Rouge,
right.
But I could see it. But I never, until you could feel it, that's a whole different deal. And I felt it being over there. So I started kind of exploring it. And anyone I talked to they were discouraging me from even thinking about it. They're saying, hey, it's a dirty business. There's a lot of snakes, politic. You don't want to get in it. Keep doing your mission work. And what's crazy, Tim, I followed who was getting in the race. I kind of kept up with it while still coaching. And it was probably a week out from the deadline to qualify. And I hit my wife with it. I said, and my whole point, I never thought I'd win. Okay, now I'm competitive.
Right.
But my whole deal is I could use this platform to speak on what's going on in the city, the things that are lacking. And I changed my mind a bunch of times. And I could tell you, I qualified on the last day to qualify. And I didn't even know if I was going to pull in the city hall because it was storming and raining. I had put on a suit. I had all my paperwork. And I had my clothes to go work out the Estruma boys.
Right.
We had workouts that morning. And I was praying. I drove downtown and it was storming, raining. And I passed the building up. I said, shoot, I'm going to practice. Well, I said, something told me. I turned around, and when I turned around, there was a parking spot right in front of City Hall. The rain stopped, and I'm weird. I said, hey, this is God. I walked in and I qualified.
Well, let me just stop you there. That's not weird. There are people like us. If you listen to some of my podcasts, I mentioned some things like this too. So I think God has a plan and a vision, and he told you that day at that moment, this is where I need you and this is what I need you to do. So definitely it's not weird. And everybody that's listening to this podcast, has had these same feelings. So I can assure you that it's inspirational to hear you say that.
Yeah, it was. It's definitely anointed and a calling, because you get in. There's 8 candidates. Of course, I knew who the top 2 were, and I just got in the front end of it to just have a voice and put stuff out there. Well, it kind of gets going. Well, now I'm a dean of students at Strum. I'm the head football coach. I got the family, and I have no money. Nothing. So I raised $300 or $400, and my opponents, one had 1.3 million, the another had $1 million in the bank.
Man.
And I bought. I would buy signs. So you know how they sign wave during campaigns? Well, they usually do that 2 or 3 days before the election.
Right.
But all I had money to do was buy some signs, put some in people's yards, and get a sign waving team of friends to sign wave as early as August. They were sign waving.
Right.
And then as it was going, and they were doing these polls, and every poll had me a distant third, which meant I was ahead of 4 other people.
Right.
Okay. But a distant third. But I kept chopping, and then a little more money came in, and then I had volunteered. My campaign manager was 19 years old, a young man named Mason Batts, up and coming from Shreveport.
Nice.
Who caught our eye. I caught his eye, and he helped me. Then another guy, Rhett Davis, and it started growing. So I went and spoke at. There was a Republican delegation downtown. I wasn't invited. I still had about $500, and I went speak to them, because I was one of 2 Republican candidates, and they let me talk. Well, the party that day committed $25,000 to my campaign. Now, that compared to $1 million, but I thought that was like $1 million to me.
Yeah.
So I was able to do some radio and buy more signs. And the thing, it just kept growing. And we, the night before the primary, the poll came out that I was running at about 14%, which put me third. And that night, when the primary was over, we were the leading vote getter. We were in first.
Wow.
And the former mayor was in second. So that put us in a runoff. And then when that runoff occurred, the numbers still said I was a long shot.
Right.
Right
where you wanted to be. Right where you wanted to be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ted James had 50,000 votes. The former mayor had 54,000 votes. And I had right at 60,000 votes.
Right.
Well, when you get in a race, you do the numbers. And one Democrat bowed out, and then he endorsed the other Democrat,
right?
In the race. So it's still, and the poll, and I can tell you, I was feeling good. It gave me another 3.5 weeks to put my message out, and I could tell you when I knew we were going to win was 3 days out, December the 4th.
Yeah.
Just this feeling came over me that, you know what, we're going to pull this thing off, and just old football coach is about to become the mayor president of Baton Rouge.
Mayor president, yeah. And look, I commend you for and on a much smaller scale. I ran for the Republican Executive Committee out here in Livingston Parish. I had $200 of my own money. I bought 10 signs, and I think I put 7 of them out 3 days before the election. And I did some grassroots stuff, and I won unknown, because I'm not a politician. I did win.
Right.
And to say this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, to say this, we talked about you in some of our meetings. We obviously wouldn't vote to support you because you're not in Livingston Parish, but we knew that you had the Republican support, and I really thought you was going to win the whole time, because, first of all, I think Baton Rouge understood that it needed to change because the city was faltering, the city was violent. I told people, and I've said this on my podcast before, people thought it was an accomplishment to make it from point A to point B, meaning I leave my house on street A, I go to the mall, and I come back, and I made it, right? And that's kind of the mindset a lot of people have when they're in Baton Rouge. And I knew that if you didn't win, that the city was in serious trouble. And I thought, and you touched on it, so I want to be real clear about this. I thought that you being a football coach and understanding the needs and challenges of Baton Rouge inner city, not the whole city, inner city, I thought that the way you interacted with them kids and coached them and their parents knew you, I thought that would give you a decided advantage. And I really think that that's one of the things that led you to your victory. And everything you said about the economic disadvantages, the challenges, the homicides, all that, that's what drove me to be a good cop, because quality of life for the citizens of Baton Rouge meant a lot to me. And people always think that just because you don't live in the city, you don't feel it. You don't have the same desire. You don't have your heartstrings don't get tugged at whenever things are going bad. I moved to Livingston Parish in '99 because of the school system. I couldn't afford to put all three of my kids in private school. So I came out here to some of the school systems that were the best in the state. But in '99, I still continued to work for Baton Rouge until 2021, obviously. But I spent the better portion of my adult life working in Baton Rouge, seeing all these things that you're referring to. So you saw them on a different level. I saw them in a police capacity. You saw them as a coach. But Coach, I'll tell you this, the same areas that were bad when I started the Baton Rouge City Police in 1996 are still some of the same areas that experience high crime rates, known drug areas, a lot of violence. And I'm hoping that you, in your position, are able to change the tide and to help these communities, get a stronghold, get some economic development, get some opportunities out there. So I do appreciate the fact that you touched on that. And I want to say this, you're the new mayor now, and you had a 100-day plan. I'm not going to get into that because it's not a political show, but I want to talk about the police department. So you had a mayor that picked the chief prior to you coming. So you took over as mayor. You brought in our former chief LaDuff to be some kind of advisor. I don't know his exact title, but so you had him on board. But then you had to figure out the dynamics of the police department, the inner workings of it. So how were you able to get with the chief, meet with the chief, you, LaDuff, whoever else was involved? How did y'all come up with a plan, and did you have a plan to change the dynamics of how we approach crime in Baton Rouge? Because everything that was being done in the previous administration was failing. So kind of touch on that a little bit, if you will.
Well, crime and public safety was the number one thing I ran on, of course. And, but, my very first hire was Chief LaDuff. He is an assistant CAO in charge of public safety. So in my administration, he, communicates and works with BRPD, EMS, fire, MOSEP, and all those entities.
Okay.
With a focus on BRPD. And I know, there are some challenges. Matter of fact, I had an hour-and-a-half meeting with the BRPD hierarchy this morning, just as an update on some things. The facts are they're underpaid. Their base salary, is low, and we're about 140 officers short of a fully healthy police department.
Right.
Around 2016, 2017, the academy started dropping. We graduated an academy last week with 6 graduated out of the academy.
Yeah, I saw that, man. And then I looked at the State Police Academy that just graduated, and it used to be different, Mayor. It used to be different because when we were coming up, everybody wanted to be a city cop, and there were hundreds of people that stood in line to take those tests and to eventually either be weeded out or selected. And now the dynamics have changed, and there's a multitude of reasons. But I don't want to cut you off, but I did want to say that was very bothersome to me because I still take pride in BRPD. It's something that I put my life into. So you obviously understand now that there's challenges. So back to it.
Yeah. So, pay is certainly a big piece. The shortage of officers, which is somewhat caused by pay. I think over the years, for various reasons, the shine came off the badge. It's not a destination of choice for some people.
Agreed.
And so the big question is, you come in and how do you repair that? So the first thing is I've got to do something to address, the pay. And then it's a matter of recruitment, getting more officers on the street. I mean, there's a lot of ways to combat crime. This is a different Baton Rouge than was even 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it's certainly different than 20, 25 years ago. And I think the biggest reason is social media. And, it used to be if there was going to be a beef, back 30 years ago, that beef occurred because you ran up on someone.
Right.
But you don't have to run up on no one anymore.
Yeah.
You're online and you're disrespecting someone online.
Yeah.
So it's a different criminal element out there. And then with our police officers, I think are doing a really good job. But they go out there. I'll give an example. You could have someone, shoot at an officer or have someone commit a murder, and they're out in 2 days. We have a huge failure at the judicial level as well. So everything's connected. Yeah, everything's connected. You from the DA to the police department to the judicial system, and it's a broken system. So what I'm trying to do, from my seat, is trying to lift up and boost the police department. And the key with that, when I met with them this morning, is I keep telling, just be right. Don't be wrong. Just be right in what you do. And know that I support you to help keep our public safe. And then I think our citizens need to pay attention. I want to put, as a football coach, my record was in the paper every day.
Right.
I want to put our judges' records in the paper. I want to say, Judge John Q, here's the cases he had, who got bailed out, who got put back on the street. Here's what they did when they got on the street. They were a repeat offender. Okay, I think that should be public knowledge. And then I think our citizens need to pay attention to that. Yeah. And remember that when they go to the polls.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'll say this. I've always said in my podcast and to people that I've trained and been affiliated with, I was in the intelligence division for several years, and I focused on gang activity and stuff. And what I noticed, I noticed this my whole career. But let me just go back and tell you a funny story. They had a guy from Valley Park. He was wanted, and I had just picked him up and put him in jail. He respected me, so he didn't run. He ran from other officers, but I had a reputation where, not that they wouldn't run, but they gave me more respect than the average cop. So this particular time, I told my friend, I said, such and such has a warrant on him. I'm going to go find him. He said, you just put him in jail twice already in the last week or so. And I said, yeah, but he's got an armed robbery warrant. This was a known violent offender, from a street level, a serious thug. So when I saw him, I pulled him over in the car. He got out. I put him in my car, took him to jail. And then he got let out again. And my friend, who was a cop, he said, you called him again and they let him go again. So what you're saying is right. It's always happened. But recently, now, going back to what you said about the streets changing, you can't be a dinosaur in the police world. Every 3 to 5 years, different trends, different things come about. And if you stay in 25 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you're going to become a dinosaur. And I never allowed myself to do that because I understood social media. We made a lot of cases on social media, but we also stopped a lot of people from getting killed. When I was in the intelligence division, Murphy Paul, who was the chief at the time, he said, my intelligence division has experience in interrupting violence. So we nicknamed ourselves the violence interrupters. And I say that just because it sounded good, but we really did. You can't really quantify the things that you did that resulted in nobody getting killed or nobody getting shot or no gang beefs, right? So there's really no way to say a negative and give an actual outcome. But I can tell you this, the homicides were down, the gang activity, even though there was still some violence, it was less because they understood they had consequences. The police officers need to do a good job and a better job at creating cases, making their probable cause, and presenting it to the district attorney. The district attorney's responsibility is to prosecute a case that's a good case that the officer gave them. And then it's the judge's responsibility, if these people are convicted, to give a sentence and quit allowing them to come out. The repeat offenders, you probably have seen data. I've seen it in real life. I grew up, I was in Baton Rouge all my police career, East Baton Rouge Sheriff, LSU PD, and 24 and a half with the city. I grew up with these guys. As they grew up, I grew up as a cop, right? I seen them when they 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 25 years old, 30 years old. And a lot of them kept coming back out. You'd put them in jail one day, they out the next, or they may be out in 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. Sometimes they can't get bond. But everybody has to pull together. But if you exposing, and I use the word expose, maybe it's not the right word, but if you exposing, you're not really exposing anything but the truth. If you bring to light the truth and let people see what's going on, then it may hold these judges, the district attorney, and even the officers do a better job. District attorney, do your job. If everybody does their job, then we can change the dynamics, but it takes everybody. And you bringing that agenda forward to say, hey, here's your record, explain this. They'll
Right.
Maybe it'll help at the polls, maybe it won't, because sometimes people just, they vote for whatever reasons they vote. But I think it's a good idea. So I'm on board with your idea, and hopefully you can get some traction on that.
Yeah, the whole key behind it, I'm not hey, lock them all up and throw away the key guy. That's not who I am. But we cannot have, this violence, these violent criminals running around, and the only people I want to lock up are the ones that are killing each other. You know what I'm saying? I mean, It just, so we're working hard. We got some good initiatives, and I'm excited about the future.
Yeah, that's good. I never was a put everybody in jail kind of guy that's going to solve the problems. You have to be fair. In the police world, if you're not fair, the streets will define you and the streets will be less tolerant of you, I guess is the easiest thing to say. When I was out there, I had cordial conversation with everybody, gang members, little old ladies, and everybody in between. I thought, I never liked the word community policing. I always say there's an agenda attached to it, just like the war on crime. And I mentioned that in the past. Anytime you have something like that has an agenda attached, then it usually is not going to be as successful as it can be. I say police in the communities, Estruma, the South Baton Rouge, the bottoms, the tops, all these areas that experience a lot of crime, these areas have to be policed a little bit different than Bocage does and other areas because they don't have the same challenges. They don't have the same economic issues, right? Different parts of the city. And that's, to me, that's commendable that you're able to see that because you experienced it. When my house flooded in 2016, I felt a certain way. Prior to that, I always wondered why people were as upset about things that could be replaced until it happened to me. So the same analogy I used, you saw everything that was occurring. I saw everything that was occurring because I was experiencing it. You was hearing about it, seeing it as a coach, and that helped translate to you caring enough to run for mayor. So you said you're excited. Do you have any initiatives that may be a little different than the previous administrations that you can talk about, or are y'all still trying to, piece it together?
No, we got some things going on. So there's certainly the policing part. There's the law enforcement part, and those things are trying to boost the police department. Hopefully, the police, along with other workers, we can maybe, if we can get balanced, a pay increase is certainly something we want to do. The big part is I want to make it special again to be an officer. I want to make it something that people aspire to go to. We also have some, initiatives in the streets. We have reopened up the Office of Violence Prevention. Miss A.B. Burgess is heading that up for me, and she is a wealth of knowledge. I kind of stole her from the VA. She was working with Hiller Moore, and we got her on our staff. We started a Men for Others initiative, and it's with the 11 football playing schools in East Baton Rouge Parish, where I'm hiring those 11 head football coaches for the summer to provide me everything from intel to each of them are going to do 4 community service projects. Their ears are on the ground. You're probably talking, 11 schools. You're probably talking 500 kids involved.
Right.
To keep them busy and talk to us. Many of our council people, we've encouraged them and supported them and having summer camps. Councilman Carolyn Coleman yesterday took 100 young kids to the City Club downtown, teaching them etiquette. So we're getting into the youth. We're trying to give them options. Partnering with Superintendent Lamont Cole from East Baton Rouge Parish, as well with initiatives for the schools. So
right.
There's a lot going on. We have some programs out there that kind of boots on the ground.
Yep.
And so it's a comprehensive challenge, but we're attacking it that way.
Perfect. So I'll say this: there a lot of old cops. They like the zero tolerance mentality, but and I'm sure you've heard of it. If you haven't, I'll explain it real quick. But basically, you go into a neighborhood and you pretty much cite or arrest everybody for everything, whether it be tickets, misdemeanor summons, or felony arrest. The problem with that is this: you're asking people to be on your side, to give you information, to help stop the violence and everything. If you do a zero tolerance platform, then you're going to disproportionately target the good people, and then you're not going to have them on your side. So even though a lot of old cops will tell you, you got to go in there and do this, you have to fight crime, in my opinion, and many other people that have been successful. You have to have intelligence-based policing, and I'm hoping you having that conversation with your chief and some of their administrators. And if that's not a focus, I think that you should at least consider that intelligence-based policing is a way to focus. It's almost like now you see cops running a radar on the interstate. Back in the day, they would just have a radar, and whatever vehicle was in front, it would capture, right? Now you can precisely put a handheld radar on a car if it's 3 behind, and you can get that car for speeding, right? And you have to have the same kind of approach. You have to have a very targeted approach so you don't disproportionately disrupt neighborhoods and affect people's lives that really aren't the problem. Would you kind of agree with that, or have you looked into intelligence-based policing?
Yeah, we have, and I absolutely agree with you. And of course, I'm not the police chief, but I am the mayor. But I have my own thoughts. If there's a guy, I'm just going to be honest. I'm always honest. I'm going down the road. If I was a police officer and there's a guy and he's smoking a 1-inch blunt, in front of the grocery store and whatnot, you got to address that. But that guy don't need to go to jail. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Hey, that's just me. That's how I taught. Someone's in school and all that. But my whole deal is the safety component of it, but I agree with you. The intelligence part of it, I think now more than ever might be the most important piece.
Yeah. And look, you can get a lot of intelligence. There's a lot of crime fighters. Now, not every cop is a crime fighter. I hope you know the difference. Right. Or if you don't, you got a couple of guys, you got Chuck Harris and you got, Begnell with you. They're crime fighters, and hopefully you've had some dialogue with them about it. Both of them are accomplished in their careers, and they're crime fighters, man. They can give you some insight. I don't know who's in your inner circle as far as the police department. Obviously, you and the chief have conversation above and beyond that. Make sure that some of these old guys that are crime fighters, not just your average cop, not just a guy that goes to answer call, but people that was influential and made a difference on the street and were respected on the street. Make sure that that there's an avenue for these guys to get the word to you or the chief of LaDuff. And LaDuff, he knows pretty much all the older guys. He probably don't know the younger guys, but he knows who the crime fighters are. And I'm going to give him a shout out and I'm going to give Begnell a shout out too. Begnell won Officer of the Year, and Chief LaDuff, I consider him one of the best chiefs ever, or at least the smartest, because he gave me Officer of the Year in 2007.
Yes, I'm blessed to have both them in, and my detail guys, just super blessed. I have met with former Chief Ferris. I've met with former Chief Inglade. Of course, Sid Edwards, our sheriff. So we keep a consistent rapport, going.
That's good.
Basically, for me to support them, and any of those guys out there that that are interested, hey, y'all come on back. Or if you want to come visit me, any of our former law enforcement officers, or hey, got it? I'll listen.
Yeah.
I may not have many skills, but I'll listen. So,
yeah. Well, and that's good. And I commend you. And I hope TJ is receptive to the other chiefs also, because you need to learn. You need to learn from people that have done things in your position if they were effective. Inglade was effective. Ferries was effective. LaDuff was effective. And, the jury's still out on this chief. I don't work for him, so I don't really have a lot of insight. I'm hoping that what he's doing is trending in the right direction as far as the department. Do you have any plans going forward? I know we've been on the podcast for a while, but it's been a real joy talking to you. Do you have any plans going forward as far as any summer initiatives to train people in any kind of VOTEC skills? Because I always tell people this. We put together all these social programs, and then even something that we did years ago was called the Brave Initiative. We bring them in and tell them we have these resources for you. We're going to train you. We're going to do this. My opinion on that is much different, but I lived this life. I see these guys coming and going. If you don't take them out of, let me just make this point. If you don't take them out of their environment, you can give them all these resources, but if they're in the same environment, when things get tough, they're going to revert back to the things that made them successful. And that's either being a criminal, drug dealer, or whatever. So I always remember that, because a lot of people lose track of that. They lose track of these social programs, thinking that it's all good. And most of them don't have a huge amount of success. I think the first one I looked at was in Boston, and that was many years ago. But these guys, girls, whatever, they need opportunity to further their skills and be able to get out of the environments they're in. And one more thing about these events that y'all put on. A lot of events that y'all put on, and look, we did them forever when I was a cop the whole time. I like the community involvement and everything, but most of the people that we target are already on our side, and nobody seems to think that the people that aren't on our side should be engaged. And I hope that I'm not being derogatory about any events, because this was well before you, and it'll be well after you. They'll still be doing these kind of functions. But we need to focus, in my opinion, we need to focus a little attention also on the guys that aren't on our side, and let's try to get them to tell their friends to quit shooting, tell their little brothers to quit shooting, their cousins, and get them on our side. So I hope that's something that y'all may be looking at also.
We are. I promise you, we attacking it from every angle for sure.
Well, Mayor, I think we kind of getting to the tail end of this, but I really want to tell you that I wish you nothing but success. As a former Redemptus High graduate, all of us that have followed you throughout your coaching career, even though I was a little bit wrong on some of the dates and stuff, it's been a long time ago, and I was also living a life. I commend you for taking on the challenge of being the mayor, and I think that you had wasn't it 66% or so?
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I forgot the percentage. I'm not sure, but we won pretty good.
It was something that I heard the word mandate used, and I think that Baton Rouge had enough. So continue doing what you and God and your advisors think is right, and I want you to do me a favor. I want you to keep in mind that these cops out here, they need good pay. To retain them, you have to have good morale and good benefits, and to recruit them. Recruiting used to take care of itself, because no matter where we went in the country, we competed. Let your canines go to competitions. Let your motorcycle division go to competition, because we competed all over, and everybody knew Baton Rouge City Police. Everybody in every state. You go to another state and you see a cop, they know Baton Rouge and they respected us. And I really feel like we need to get that back, because there's a lot of us retirees that have a lot of pride in that department, and we think that you're the guy to get it accomplished. And we hope that the people in the police department are listening to you and making sure that your objectives, because you were the one who was elected. Nobody else was elected. Everybody else was appointed or just had a job. The people spoke on your behalf, and I hope that you're able to to be successful. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I appreciate it, and I thank you for having me on. And let's keep on working together, my friend.
Yep. You let the retirees know if you want us back. And I'm not saying they'll all come back, but in advisory role, in any kind of role, whatever help you need. And me personally, your people know my phone number because they reached out to me. Chuck knows my phone number. Becknell knows it. Anything I can do to help you at all, at a just from strategy standpoint, at a public event to speak. My focus was always on the young people because Baton Rouge has a disproportionate amount of violence with young black males, and those are the people that I tried to make sure had an outlet and had somebody to talk to and could say, hey, help us with this, help us with that, So I think you're on point with everything that we talked about today. Thank you for being on Big Head on the Block.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and y'all have a good one. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Head on the Block. I'm Tim Henderson, the host. I look forward to dropping another podcast soon. Please give us any comments, likes, dislikes, or any topics y'all would like to discuss. Thank you.